Hi, my name is PJ Starks. I'm a writer, director, and producer. I mainly do horror films. I've done a few other things, web series and that sort of thing, but I'm really excited to be a part of this, so I really appreciate the opportunity. I got into visual storytelling when my grandparents got me a RCA camcorder when I was about 12 years old. So I'm 38 now. It's been a while. I still have that same RCA camcorder though, so I'm pretty proud of that. Originally, I wanted to be a writer, and I wrote constantly. Eventually, that turned into a love of what it took to make a movie. I've always been fascinated with the behind-the-scenes stuff, and of course, in the 90s, the 80s and the 90s, it was a lot harder to get your hands on the behind-the-scenes footage and hear all those stories about what it took. You basically had to wait until you saw it on cable TV. Going into the 2000s, all that changed with DVDs, and then you could really sink your teeth into all the supplemental features and things that told you exactly how films were made. But growing up, I had to read books. You probably have heard of those. But in the beginning, that's ultimately what brought me into wanting to be a filmmaker, was getting my hands on something, a piece of equipment that allowed me to tell the story that I wanted to tell. And the love grew from there. What I've learned doing film is you kind of have a lot of firsts along the way. The first real film project I made was for a college class, and I was working third shift at the Fairfield Inn, and of course I had to make a commercial. I wasn't happy with that. I didn't want to settle on making a 30-second commercial, so I told the professor that I was going to make a hour-and-a-half long feature film. He said, good luck. There's a few things that hold up, but overall it's garbage. The movie is garbage. These were comedies. I started in comedy. I love horror films. I've always loved horror films. Those are the movies I watched more often than not. If I used to have Saturday night marathons with, the Hitchhiker and Monsters and Ray Bradbury Theater and Alfred Hitchcock Presents when they would come on TV. So horror has always been my first love, but I've always also kind of aimed towards comedy in my own personal life, because when you look like this, you really have to kind of build upon something, and my personality ended up being that. So I ended up aiming at humor and doing a lot of humorous stuff, which even now when I do a horror film, I inject a lot of humor into the dialogue or maybe certain situations. I have a hard time not doing that. And then in 2008 is when I decided to get serious, and of course I'd been doing videography and all that professionally for almost a decade at that point. So my real first serious feature film was called Hallows Eve, Slaughter on 2nd Street, and it was kind of a grown-up version of Scooby-Doo. It even had the ghost hunters, and they were on a case trying to solve a mystery, and of course it was chock full of dick and fart jokes, and there was a whole lot of fucks thrown in there for fun. In a lot of ways it holds up, in a lot of ways it doesn't. I'm very proud of that project. Ultimately, when it comes to a first, Hallows Eve, Slaughter on 2nd Street is my first real foray into the professional side of independent filmmaking. So I've been doing professional videography and video work for almost 20 years now. I've done everything from commercials, of course I've done independent films, I've done web series, PSAs, I've done a lot of interest pieces when it comes to stuff like the United Way and different organizations. And now what I do is I work professionally for a law firm. I'm the director of technical operations at Foreman Watson Hultree. That's a fancy way of saying I'm their video guy. So I do all of their video production in terms of settlement videos. I've done some dram shop cases. I've done wrongful death cases, which are always horrible to work on. When you're making a film, you're telling a story, and that's all that I've ever wanted to do was tell stories. And I've been very fortunate and lucky over the past 12 years to be doing that from a professional hobby standpoint, making independent films and producing other people's films. But that's what I do now. Even now, I'm telling people's stories. But every day I'm making little documentaries for work that go off. And I've done hundreds of those at this point. I've been able to tell fictional stories, and I've been able to tell very real stories. I tell people all the time that I've been failing upwards for a lot of years. There was a short stint where I wasn't even doing film, I was doing a lot of events. I created this event at Kentucky Wesleyan College called the Indie Film Series, and that only lasted for one series until I came up with the idea for Unscripted, which I then pitched Unscripted to the Davis County Public Library. That took off. It did far better than I ever anticipated. It got tons of coverage, and it was covered by PBS. They did a little story on it. Unscripted went very well. They came to me with an idea to take Unscripted to the next level, which we co-collaborated on, and that became the Unscripted Film School, which opened up an opportunity for people in the community to get involved and see what it took for an independent film production to happen. And we did that, and then that led to them saying, what do you want to do? What do you want to do next? How can we take Unscripted to the next level? And that's when I came up with Volumes of Blood. We ended up doing an anthology series with different directors over a period of months where the entire film coalesced into a feature film, and everything took place in a library, and it was our opportunity and my opportunity to do something really creative and jump back into the director's chair and really sink my teeth into producing a film. And that is what led to me, I guess ultimately is what led to me getting my name out there, was Volumes of Blood. So I owe a lot to the Davis County Public Library. I owe a lot to the people who worked on that project. Eric Huskisson, who is my producing partner through Blood Moon Pictures, we work together on all of our projects now. I owe a lot to him. He's very dedicated. He's a really cool guy, and we get along very well. And I'm very fortunate to have found someone that I can partner with who carries just as much of the weight in the project as I do. Because when you can find a producing partner that works just as hard as you do and wants to see something happen just as badly as you do, you've gotten very lucky, and I've gotten lucky with Eric's. Of course, that led to a sequel, Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, which did far better than what we anticipated, just like the first film did. I had come up with a trilogy, the anthology for Volumes of Blood. We struggled a lot with trying to get the financing because it's a much larger film in scope and narrative and special effects and wardrobe, and everything about it's just bigger and better. We were not able to get the needed funds, so we've had to kind of start from scratch and kind of think of different out-of-the-box ideas in terms of how we're going to get the financing, which we're still working on right now. But in the meantime, what we've done is we pulled another idea off the shelf that I'd come up with several years ago called 13 Slays Till Christmas, and that's what we're currently working on. There's 13 filmmakers, 14 actually, who have all come together and are producing original content for this anthology. I could not be more excited about working on this project. It's fun, it's funny, it's scary, it's got a whole lot of different aspects. So currently that's what we're working on. We're trying to get Volumes of Blood 3, which is called Devil's Night, financed, and then once this pandemic smooths over, then we'll get back into finishing 13 Slays Till Christmas, which we hope to have out at the end of the year. We'll see what happens considering how things are going right now, but ultimately that's what we're working on, and I'm really excited about it. Constructive criticism is very important. If you can't accept someone else's opinion of something you've done, because when you make a film, that's what you're doing. You're putting it out there. If you can't accept what someone else thinks about it and you take it to heart and you're just done and ready to throw in the towel, you might want to rethink going into this. If you can take what someone says and find some kind of nugget of truth in there, even if they give you one of the most horrible reviews you've ever had, if you can still pull something out of it from a positivity standpoint and say, well, maybe they are right about this. Maybe not 98% of everything they said because it's their own personal taste, but they do make sense when they say this. So I pull that out and I use it and I put it in my arsenal. I think the best advice I can give someone is just make your film. When I first started out, it was tough. You had to have a camera. You had to know someone who had a camera. Of course, you had to buy VHS tapes and things like that. Now, equipment, especially prosumer equipment, is so accessible. And there's so many different people with different abilities who are just as hungry at making something creative as you are. And they're accessible because of social media and all the different platforms now, which I didn't have any of that. I had to do all this on my own, figure it out all on my own. I would have died to have someone who was more seasoned like myself or a lot of these other filmmaker friends of mine to come on board or give advice or just say, hey, great job, keep it up, you know, but we didn't have any of that. There are people out there that want to make something, and it's not about a paycheck. It's not about money or the dollar signs. It's not about trying to be famous. There is a professionalism that comes into it. You have to be responsible about it. You have to think about your cast. You have to think about your crew. It's a very selfless position to be in if you're trying to make film. I know you know, you say I, me a lot, but at the same time, if it wasn't for everybody in the credits that you see on the productions that I work on, they would literally just be ideas. It would be ideas on a sheet of paper that mean absolutely nothing and would more than likely never come to fruition. Like I said, you're going to fail a lot. I have failed a lot. And it's funny because even though I made Volumes of Blood and then Volumes of Blood 2, even now, you know, I tried to finance Volumes of Blood 3, it didn't happen. I failed at that. So even when you do something that takes you to the next level, that doesn't mean you're going to get to do what you want to do next. You know, you're going to keep failing. And that's okay. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You can't be afraid to fail. You have to take those failures and say, okay, well, that didn't work out the way that I wanted it to. What can I do? What can I do to make something happen? And that for me, that was 13 Slays. I took an idea that had literally been sitting on a shelf collecting dust, and I reached out to people who wanted to be doing something or want to be a part of something. And they're doing their own things, and they're extremely creative, and there's some incredible filmmakers that, to some degree, I've said are far too good to be a part of this project, but you know, they're like me in the sense that they want to be a part of something. They love collaboration, and for me, that's what it's about. It's collaborating. It's working with other filmmakers. It's working with other creative entities, whether it's writers or actors or crew members, and it's coming together and it's making something tangible that you can see on the big screen, and you can step back when it's all over with, no matter how sick and tired you are of seeing it, and say, you know, I put my stamp on that, and see what happens. And that's exciting too. So just make your film, no matter how you have to do it, whether it's an iPhone or a DSLR or you know, an RE or a Red. No matter what, do it. Just make your movie. Okay, so hopefully somewhere in my ramblings you found a small nugget somewhere where you can say, hey, that makes sense. Maybe you learned something. I don't know. I guess we'll see. But this has been a really cool opportunity. And I guess the best way if you ever want to get in touch with me, you can find me on Facebook. I'm extremely accessible there. You can also go to bloodmoonpictures.com, where you can find out all about you know, how, if you are interested in checking out Volumes of Blood horror stories, you can go to darkcutspictures.com for VOBHS and Screen Team Releasing if you want to check out the special collector's edition of the first movie, which right now physical media is the only way you can get your hands on it. Justin Seaman, who is in charge of Scream Team Releasing, has a garage full of these movies. He's ready, probably bathtubs full, that he's ready to get out. So go check that out, screamteamreleasing.com. You can get your hands on a copy of Volumes of Blood. But the best way to find out about the stuff that I've done, if you're interested, and I hate saying it this way, but you can Google my name. But that's typically the best way to figure out what I'm involved in and what I'm doing or what I've done. Hit me up on Facebook if you're interested to know more. Email us at bloodmoonpictures.com. And again, thank you all so much. And like I said, hopefully you learned something. But if you didn't, you probably shut this off a long time ago. So thank you.